Elderly Ladies Shouldn't Ride Bikes by Janelle Brangwin of Bowral 2576. Narrated by Rowena Robinson. It seemed a good idea at the time. Chris and I were visiting Cambodia and Laos, and our daughter had suggested that hiring bikes to ride around Angkor Wat would be far more pleasant than trudging about under the heat of the Cambodian sun. Great idea! So, before we left home, we arranged to hire bikes and a guide, and on the appointed day arrived at the temple complex with great enthusiasm. I hadn't cycled for years, and I'd recently had a hip replacement. But I wasn't going to allow those factors to deter me. What could be simpler than a pleasant pedal around some of the most stunning buildings in the world? I hadn't factored into the equation that we would be riding mountain bikes, big, heavy, unisex bikes with multiple gears. I would never be able to ride one of those. The lovely, gentle paths of my imagination turned out to be narrow, winding jungle trails, obstructed by roots and the mud puddles of the monsoon season. Apart from the fact that following my hip replacement, I couldn't even get my leg over the bar of the bike, I didn't have the strength to maneuver it quickly enough to avoid all the trees and thorn bushes that jumped in my path. It seemed I was having to stop every 5 seconds. I was supposed to be enjoying all these ancient wonders, but didn't have the time to look at them. All I could see were roots and trees looming up at me, waiting to trip me up. It was with great relief each time we stopped at another hidden tomb or temple so that I could get my 2 feet firmly on the ground and go back to the trudging we'd been trying to avoid. Angkor Wat still managed to mesmerize. But at the end of a morning's pulverizing, I was happy to return to enjoying the beauty of Cambodia in a more sedate fashion. However, with all the optimism and forward planning of septuagenarians, we had organized another bike tour, this time in Luang Prabang, the ancient capital of Laos. On the banks of the Mekong River, Luang Prabang is best known for its picturesque old town, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, with no cars allowed on its streets, not jungle tracks, no traffic. That shouldn't be a problem, and I made sure I could get a normal, old-fashioned bike designed for a lady. The only trouble was we were picked up from our hotel, which was not in the old town, and so we had to cycle across the city to get there. Somewhat shaky and a little nervous, we managed to negotiate our way through the crazy traffic of a Southeast Asian city until we reached the empty, flat roads of the old royal capital. It was perfect, soft cycling through ancient palaces and temples, avoiding the saffron-clad monks as they wound their way through the streets with their begging bowls, a sight unchanged for hundreds of years. We almost floated down to the cafes along the tree-lined river. Bliss! This was more like it. But we had to return to our hotel, which meant cycling back through the main part of the city. Our guide had stressed the importance of giving very visible hand signals when we had to turn corners. But I was becoming very shaky whenever I had to cross traffic. At last there was only one corner left before we were in the relative quiet of our own street. Left arm out, trying to control the slowing bike with the other and avoid the gravel on the road, I lost control and crashed to the ground. I wasn't really hurt, and somehow the traffic coming in the opposite direction managed to avoid me, but I did get a bit of a shock. The guide picked up the bike and Chris got me to the side of the road, but the shock and the intense sunlight made me feel rather dizzy. Sonny, our guide, took me to the only shade available, the market stall on the edge of the road. The two cheerful women of unknown vintage running the stall installed me on a kindy-sized chair in front of a fan and offered me some concoction to insert in my nose. The aroma of fresh herbs and jungle greens, of dried pork and chicken strips, of still swimming crabs and eels wafted down on me as I tried to stop my head join in with all that swimming. Sonny looked concerned. My husband looked concerned. The two elderly-looking women looked really concerned. They muttered among themselves and the growing number of onlookers. "What are they saying?" I asked the guide. "They look worried." Appearing a little unsure about how he should convey those concerns, he replied, "They are worried. They say old ladies in Laos don't ride bikes. They stay at home and look after the grandchildren." Suitably admonished, I finally thanked these two kind ladies. There they were, still hard at work, not gallivanting all over the countryside on a bike. Bowing politely to them, I squeezed through the crowd and tried to walk in as dignified a manner as possible back to the hotel. I was glad I'd had my two-wheeled adventure, despite its discomforts. I knew it would enrich all my memories of two wonderful places. However, it was probably time I took notice of what those wise old ladies had said. I haven't ridden a bike since. The end.